6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
How about we do it again?
6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I fallen.
Okay, let's try one more time.
I definitely.
Ready?
Ranking review. Ranking review. Ranking review.
Say 6,
6,
5,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And here we are at the 230th episode of Rank and Review. I, as always, am your host and random Canadian Larry Parsons, and in this particular episode, we're going to be talking about animated fantasy films. Animation has always been a favorite of mine, and I like the escapism of it, I like the awe of it, but a lot of the times the animation is enough. I like when it's employed to tell a good story as well. How good the story is and how well it matches the animation, well, my guest Kurt Fitzpatrick is going to help me discuss that, and we're going to try and figure out who these movies are all for, if not just for children, and what they've got to say, if they have more to their minds than base spectacle. As usual, you should go into the podcast expecting coarse language, mostly from me, and spoilers for the 6 movies we'll be reviewing and then ranking. If you have feedback, I'd welcome that. You can send it to ranknreview@gmail.com. That's RANKNREVIEW@gmail.com. The website is Ranknreview.ca. You can hear Kurt on his podcast, A Lifetime of Hallmark, which has recently celebrated its 200th episode. So lend them your ears. They're a riot. Now, let's talk about some animated fantasy. I have Mr. Kurt Fitzpatrick back on the show. It's been a hot minute since you've been on Rank and Review, brother. I am so happy to have you back.
I'm very happy to be here. I think it's been about a year and a half.
Yeah, something like that. But a lot happens in a year and a half.
I'm talking about The Running Man and several other movies.
Critters 2, the important
Critters 2, yeah, the Easter. That's right. I think about you every Easter. So that was an officially an Easter movie.
I don't know. I might be crazy, but I think that Critters 2 is an unsung movie of our youth.
Yes, and I had not seen it before that, so you provided me with that opportunity.
Just one of the many services that Rank and Review provides. I gave you options of what to do for your next episode, and you chose animated fantasy. I'm curious why. What brought you to this list? Was it one of the movies, or is it the genre itself?
The way I made this decision is I looked up all the movies, and I wanted to see how many were available to me for free.
Right.
And that's what guided my viewing process. That's the science that I chose to decide. But also, it's a good list. I think there were a couple on there where I was like, I don't want to watch that movie. But this was a list of movies. There was a couple of them I had seen when I was a kid, and then some of them I had never heard of. So yeah, this was worthwhile. Well,
it hits a couple of strong beats from my childhood in The Last Unicorn and The Secret of NIMH. For me, I think it brings up the discussion of not all of these movies are directed specifically at children, but I would say most of them are. And a lot of them have, or considered to have, sharper edges for kids' movies. With the exception of maybe Ponyo, I would argue maybe all of these movies have moments that are pretty dark and hard for kids. There seems to be two schools of thoughts. There's like, protect your kids from everything you can for as long as you can, or give your kids some credit. They can handle things. You know, the Grimm's fairy tales were horror stories. You know, they deal with orphans and witches and scary things for a reason. Do you think there is a line when it comes to children's entertainment, and do you think these movies cross it?
Well, I would say two of these movies were not made for children. I can say what they are, right?
Sure.
Skip ahead and say, or should we wait?
No, you go ahead. Let it go.
And, you know, a kid might like it, and BIRDBOY, The Forgotten Children, would be a little hard on a child. They may have some nightmares after that. Just the images.
Yeah. My whole question about BIRDBOY when we talk about that will be like, who is this movie for?
I don't know, but I'll have some words about that. But it reminds me, years ago, a movie came out called Fritz the Cat. With a cat. It's the R. Crumb character, and it was an X-rated movie.
Yeah.
X-rated animated movie, and my mom's friend dropped their kids off at the movie theater to go see this cartoon movie called Fritz the Cat. They wouldn't let the kids in the theater. The kids were like stranded outside.
Oh no!
So sometimes it does get a little confusing. But I would say the one thing about BIRDBOY is that it did look, and it was based on a graphic novel.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. You're freezing a little bit there. You say it was based on a graphic novel, and then I lost you there for a second, but you're back now.
Okay, yeah. So it's based on graphic novel, that perhaps that's who the audience is.
Right. People who would have been into the graphic novel. It's a pretty narrow audience, unfortunately. Where do you land on how scary or how dark do you think a movie for kids can go, though? How scary it can go? I don't know. It depends on how scared the kids can get. It's hard to say. I mean, there's definitely scary stuff in the Secret of NIMH, but I guess if I think about it as a kid, as long as it kind of ended on an okay note, I probably would have been all right. I would have gotten over whatever scary saw along the way. I remember if it just ended in apocalypse horror, maybe not. This animated feature introduced my kids to the apocalypse. I don't know. I remember as a kid, it's not a animated movie, but my dad took me to see E.T. because in the 80s you were a bad parent if you didn't take your kid to see E.T. And even though it all worked out in the end and E.T. lived and he got to go home, I was so upset by the pseudo death of E.T. and the scare and the drama of the movie that was most of what I took out of the experience, was that it was scary and sad. I to this day don't think I don't think it's one of Spielberg's best movies. I'm in that controversial field where I get why people love E.T. I'm just not one of those people. But I do think that kids have pretty strong backbone and that they can handle more than we give them credit for. But just because they can handle it doesn't necessarily mean that they should be subjected to something traumatizing before they're ready for it either, you know. There is truth to letting kids be kids. I remember watching as a kid, this is also not an animated film, but I remember watching Willy Wonka as a kid and really understanding how subversive it was. I knew something was off here. People are getting harmed in this movie, you know? I was as a kid, I remember just being sort of creeped. It may have been the first time I ever felt creeped out. Right. But yeah, there was something happening there. Gene Wilder's yelling at me. It was there for the kids to see. Well, it wasn't just the old people are all just bedridden and people weren't doing well. Yeah. Well, the depiction of poverty, the depiction of, like I said, children being orphaned, it happens so often in fantasy movies. So there's a wide field to choose from. Before we get started, I just wanted to shout out your podcast, A Lifetime of Hallmark, which, congratulations, hit 200 episodes recently, you said? That's what we hear. Yeah, that's what Podbeam is saying. Wow. We've been doing it for over about 5 years, I think,
Yeah.
That's impressive. Congratulations for that. Well, this is my 10th season of Rank and Review we're starting here.
Oh, wow. Well, congratulations to you.
Look at us patting each other on the back. If there's nothing else, I'm going to list the movies we're going to rank, and we can get this thing on the road. Sounds good? So the 6 animated fantasy movies that Kurt Fitzpatrick and myself, your host and random Canadian Larry Parsons, are going to review. The Last Unicorn, with music by America. KUBO and the Two Strings. BEOWULF. It's interesting how people seem to have forgotten that BEOWULF existed. This is from Robert Zemeckis, and it's written by Neil Gaiman and Roger Avery, co-writer of Pulp Fiction.
Yeah,
And it's like an adaptation of one of the oldest fantasy tales that we are aware it exists. And it'll be an interesting conversation. BIRDBOY, The Forgotten Children, which we mentioned a little bit in this introduction. Maybe the darkest movie on this list. From Hayao Miyazaki, a favorite filmmaker of mine, PONYO. And we'll finish it off with the PG-13 animated 80s feature, The Secret of NIMH. Thank you so much once again for being here, man.
my pleasure.
Celebrating 25 years of the timeless fantasy classic, The Last Unicorn.
Unicorns? I thought they only existed in fairy tales.
I tell you, there is one unicorn left in the world.
I am the only unicorn there is.
She was the last of her kind. Now she is on a quest to find others like herself. Experience the magic of the most enchanted adventure of a lifetime. Featuring the voice talents of Jeff Bridges, Mia Farrow, Angela Lansbury, and songs performed by America. Now in a 25th anniversary widescreen special edition DVD with newly remastered picture and sound. It's a treasured fantasy classic of incomparable charm.
What if there isn't a happy ending at all?
There are no happy endings because nothing ends.
Based on the book by Hugo Award winner Peter S. Beagle, The Last Unicorn, 25th Anniversary Special Edition DVD. Coming to DVD February 6th, 2007.
So, The Last Unicorn is a movie that I saw and quite enjoyed when I was a little kid. But I do think that, I don't know if it's holding its sort of reputation over time. I know it's based off of a book that's quite popular, and in some ways it's right up my alley, but in other ways it was uncomfortably feminine. There's a real romantic angle to The Last Unicorn. So as a kid especially, I really enjoyed particularly the first half of the movie, where we're introduced to the fantastical creatures, Schmendrick, the not-so-great magician, and, this unicorn who is immortal and has been alone so long, she's starting to wonder where all the other unicorns are, and she goes on this quest to find them. And it's from Rankin Bass, who these animators who produced a lot of, Christmas stop-motion animated films from the 60s and 70s. And this is them trying to be more modern and relevant in the 80s and competitive. But there are weird, strange ends to the movie in that sometimes it's overtly silly and outlandish and kid-like, and other times it's kind of weirdly dark and sexual and adult in a way that maybe could be a step or two over the line. I think that that's part of what drew me into it as a kid, that there was some weird stuff. The harpy has 3 breasts, and there's a tree that gets brought to life that seems to be interested in Schmendrick in a more than friends kind of way. It felt a little bit sort of boundary pushing, even as a little kid. So that stuff I still like. That stuff I think makes the movie stand out and is interesting. I'm not as big on the second half of the movie when we get to the castle and the sort of romantic storyline. And there are songs throughout the movie, but it seems in the second half it almost becomes a musical. We go from song to song to song, and I think we start to lose some of the story beats. I have a nostalgic connection to it because of how much I enjoyed it as a kid, but I don't want to oversell The Last Unicorn. I think that it has a very sort of specific audience, and if you're in that audience, you probably already know, and you've probably already seen it. But where do you start on The Last Unicorn?
Well, I also saw this when I was a kid, and the reason why I remember Jeff Bridges' character, I forget what his name was in this.
Right.
Actually, I could tell you what his name was. The Jeff Bridges character, who was Prince Lear, King Hagrid's adopted son. He's writing a love letter to the unicorn, who's now a woman, and he's crumbling it up, and he says, "Damn." Yeah. And that was a shocker for me. I had never heard a cartoon character swear.
That's right.
So I remember being shocked by that. So that's why I know I saw this movie as a kid, because I just relived that. Watching it again, I saw him walk up the steps and saying, "Damn."
Yeah.
But, yeah, I did enjoy... I enjoyed watching darker elements. The actual animation aspect of it wasn't as interesting. It was animated films where there was almost like a still shot. I mean, I don't know much about how they make animation, but it seemed like artists, and they'd have some animated things going on in front of it. It seemed less interesting than some of these other movies that we will discuss.
Well,
I did like that music. I did like the music. You said it was America, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the band America supplied, I think, 8 songs for the soundtrack.
Yeah. Yes, it's The Last Unicorn.
Yeah, Man's Road and The Last Unicorn stand out, but a lot of the other songs really don't for me. But I'm not a musical type of guy, so maybe it's just... for me, I just wanted to get back to the monsters and the quest and the story a lot of the times whenever the songs kicked in. And as far as the animation, you were saying, yeah, I agree. We have this sort of painted background, and then the animated figures sort of walking on top of these painted backgrounds in a way that's kind of noticeable in some of the scenes. But I think that, like, this generation of kids growing up on Pixar and stuff are kind of spoiled. This was pretty good spectacle to me in the 80s. Again, part of what's making it show its age is that, animation is much more impressive, but I do think it absolutely fits in for the time it was made. Like, it didn't look bad for the time it was made anyway.
No, it looks good. I mean, there's some pretty violent, scary stuff. Like, there's the big crow beast that like eats the woman alive, pretty much, and
the harpy.
And that's the harpy. Yeah, the harpy. Yeah.
Yeah, and that old crone who runs the fair, who I thought was kind of creepy when a kid, is actually voiced by Angela Lansbury. And I usually associate her with...
Really?
Yeah, she's usually plays sweet, friendly characters.
Oh, I see that. Yeah. Mommy Fortuna.
Yeah.
Yes, Angela Lansbury. Okay.
It does have an interesting voice cast, although as much as it's against my good nature to say anything bad about Jeff Bridges, I found Jeff Bridges uncharacteristically flat in this movie. Apparently he volunteered to do the voice work for free. I don't know if he liked Rankin Bass or he liked the book or whatever, but he gave them their money's worth, I guess.
Okay.
I felt he was a little bit flat, but most of the other voices were quite strong, and yeah. What do you think about the turn? Like, it starts as a quest movie, and then she finds the Red Bull, which has driven all of the other unicorns into the sea, and they're immortal creatures, so they're still alive out there somehow. But in order to protect her, Schmendrick turns her into a woman. And then the sort of quest part of the movie stops, and then it becomes them living in Hagrid's palace, and, this romance between... the unicorn and Jeff Bridges' character, and her forgetting her identity and all of that. Like, did it feel like 2 different movies to you, or does it belong to each other?
I guess so. Well, and that was different. It took a shift when she's no longer a unicorn, she's a woman, and she's very emo and very moody, and She I don't even think she speaks to Jeff Bridges, so he's like really frustrated.
Yeah, he's really trying. He's slaying dragons for her, doing all of the things that a knight's supposed to do, and she's not really. Well, she's mysterious and aloof, which is part of the attraction, I suppose. But
yeah, she's just despondent, and I mean, it takes a shift with that. Yeah, I guess it's a little bit of a romance, not very successful one.
Yeah. I do think that the first half of the movie still remains much more interesting than the second half of the movie. I want to say, was it Mia Farrow that voiced the unicorn? Yes.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
I don't know. I like Mia Farrow as an actress, but I don't know if it's the way it's written, but there's something strange about the performance. I understand that she's been a unicorn most of her life, and she's just getting used to being a person, but I don't know, there's something in the delivery of her. It's overly earnest. I know, like, it's a kid's movie, or supposedly a kid's movie, but some of the themes that they're touching on here is like she's going to discard her entire immortal life because she's finally understood what love is. So as a unicorn, did she not understand what love was, or did she just forget? I feel like there's a portion missing. They kind of simplified it for their audience, maybe.
Okay. I've been a long time fan of Robert Klein, so I enjoyed him as the butterfly, just singing along, and that was the right kind of role for him, I think. Yeah.
And one of the weird sort of big kiddie kind of embellishments of the movie. He sings, he dances, he doesn't answer questions directly, but he's fun and he's silly. But, as to why this butterfly has all the inside information about this world, we don't know. But we don't have to know.
No, and he doesn't overstay his welcome. He's in and out.
Yeah.
So.
Schmendrick, who is voiced by Alan Arkin. I really enjoy his character in that he is a legit magician, but just trying to figure stuff out. But in a way, his ability to see the unicorn, Mama Fortuna has to put a false horn on the unicorn so that the people that come to see her show will recognize her as an actual unicorn. But Schmendrick knows right away. He sees her for what she is right away, which kind of legitimizes him as a magic user or a magician. And he commits to helping this creature. Like, he does not want her to be, imprisoned by Fortuna. And when magic doesn't work, he just steals the keys to bust her out. And I don't know. I think that Schmendrick is probably the strongest character that we have, and is a good central sort of person. We can't really access the unicorn because she's so immortal and above and better than everything. And King Haggard, voiced by Christopher Lee, is an interesting character, but mad, right? Like, not very accessible. I think, it's Schmendrick who helps us sort of get into the world and into the story. And definitely, from a little kid's perspective, I was always cheering for him. He would always screw up, or the spell would go slightly different than he wanted to, but you were always on side.
Right, yeah, because it was cool. So magic really does exist. You just have to be good at it. Yeah, he was working on it. I got a little scared for the unicorn because he was trying to. I think he was trying to like open up the cage to get her out, but it started shrinking the cage.
He's going to squish her.
Claustrophobic experience. I wouldn't want to see that.
Yeah. Little great details. The weird piratey cat that lives in the castle.
I like the cat, yeah.
Where the laughing skull and bones that wants alcohol even though it can't drink anything. Again, it's sort of a strangely dark thing. Like, that's a horrible fate. You're still a skeleton, but you're sentient. You can want things, but you can't feel them anymore. Again, a dark thing. Dark thing to try to sell to the kids.
Yeah, you can't really drink, but you want to drink. Oh, yeah. That's tragic. That's a tragic thing. Yeah, he's so happy. He's laughing, and having a grand old time. So
mad as a hatter.
Maybe it's so bad he doesn't know. He just doesn't know.
So I'm a fan of the movie. Like, it's not going to rank at the top of the list or anything like that. But my question, I guess, will be, do you think it's just for people like you and I who enjoyed it as a kid? Do you think it's got staying power? That, like, in the kids who were raised on Kung Fu Panda or whatever nowadays, like, does The Last Unicorn still have relevancy?
I think so. In terms of the storyline, it would. Do you think they would watch it in terms of like the style, the animation? Do you think they'd watch that and kind of enjoy it for being a retro thing?
They might enjoy it for the retro thing, or they might enjoy it for the more weird adult angles. Like I said, the harpy has 3 breasts for some reason. That's a strange choice, but they made that choice. You know?
Right.
And
it's a strong choice, yeah. I think I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes to whether kids would enjoy this now. Yeah. I don't see why not.
I mostly enjoyed rewatching it, but I think I probably enjoyed it more as a child. There's sort of this risk that you take when you revisit sort of things that were sacred to you as a kid. Sometimes it's better to leave them where they were. And I don't think this necessarily belongs there, but it's not the amazing thing that I thought it was when I was a kid.
Okay. I don't think it was when I was a kid. I like I said, I don't think I found it groundbreaking, except for that experience of hearing a cartoon character saying a swear word. So that made an impact. Yeah, it was a shock, and I was like, "Ooh, I know cartoon characters can do that." But yeah, I guess for me that would have been an earlier animated film I saw, especially like outside of like Disney films and something a little more edgy than that.
Yeah. It's worth it. Check it out. If it sounds good to you or interesting to the listener, please give it a look. I don't want to talk anyone out of it. I just don't want to oversell it.
KUBO! KUBO! Can you hear me, KUBO? Your village is burned to the ground. Your enemies aren't far behind. We need to go now. You have questions, I can tell.
Who?
You get 3.
Why only 3?
Okay, that was your first question.
What? I don't understand what's happening.
This is the beginning of your story. Your family is very powerful. Your mother used her magic to save you. KUBO, run! And bring me to life.
What are we gonna do?
We're going to find your father's armor. It's the only thing that can protect you.
Many years ago, I was cursed. This great adventure is my destiny.
Your magic is growing stronger. You need to learn control.
KUBO and the 2 Strings is a 2016 stop-motion animated feature, and I will start with this. It is beautiful. It is a beautiful, beautiful thing to watch. Part of what I've been looking for and appreciating with this fantasy animation set is the escapism. And right away, this movie pulls you into like a tiny, fragile boat on this ocean. A mother and her little baby are in terrible, terrible danger. And it is a visual spectacle. And we haven't necessarily seen this story before. This is all kind of new to us. And it's kind of, at least initially, overwhelming. You have to kind of, at least I did, get used to the world that you were looking at and the spectacle that you're being presented with, because it's different. It doesn't feel like a Pixar movie. It doesn't feel like a Disney movie. It's tactile and alive in a way that all animated movies, I guess, are, but that especially stop-motion animation manages to accomplish. They ended up making it to this island, but the mother is badly injured, and little KUBO has lost an eye. He's got one eye. And we flash forward, and KUBO has to look after his damaged mother, and he makes his living as a performer and storyteller. And he seems to have this fate, this heroic destiny that he's destined to fulfill, and that these stories that he tells the crowds are sort of practice runs for that. The characterizations throughout the movie, as it gets progressively into we have a monkey character that's voiced by Charlize Theron, who's also the voice of the mother, and we have a beetle character voiced very enthusiastically by Matthew McConaughey, but not necessarily in a distracting way. And I think the creepiest element of the movie are the sisters, which are all voiced by Rooney Mara.
Yes.
Where Kubo can't be spotted by moonlight, because then, the fates that are after him will know where he is, and it will sort of start the chain reaction. And when they first appear to him, it's genuinely kind of an unsettling moment. And, I really, really was swept up in the movie. And I don't think it's, too dark for kids, but it is strange. It does, I think, challenge them in that it's not the same story that they've been subjected to again and again. It does have a little bit of that sort of video game plotting in that he's got this armor and these weapons that he has to acquire. And so each level he conquers an obstacle, and then he's rewarded with, the next piece of the puzzle that's going to lead him to be able to have the big boss fight. There's familiarity, I guess, in that, but only in that, which makes the whole movie to me really kind of impressive. So I don't know if you can tell, I'm a big fan of Kubo.
You loved it.
And the two strings. But I'd be happy to hear a second opinion.
Oh, no, I enjoyed it too, especially, I agree, the animation was just beautiful. It was just, I remember just at the very beginning, just noticing how the ocean was just we were coming onto the beach, just washing on the shore, and I was like, wow, like just watching it, like how do they do that? How do they create that kind of detail and animation?
There was no water on set, right? They did it.
I guess not. I was like, are they shooting a real ocean? This is, So no, it really was. It was a beautiful, striking movie to watch. And there's the two sisters. They reminded me of those two little girls from The Shining.
Oh yes.
Kind of had that kind of the Grady girls.
Yeah.
That's what they. Yeah.
The way they speak in unison.
They spoke in unison, and also just kind of the image, the way they had them set. I would take a guess to say there was some influence there, little bit of an homage there.
It's funny you say that. It kind of reminded me of the Ghosts in Coraline, another stop motion animated movie. Have you ever seen Coraline?
No.
Well, minor spoiler. There's some children ghosts in Coraline, and I sort of like, if the child ghost could quote unquote grow up, the sisters might be what they would end up being. Anyway, if you like Kubo, I would wager pretty high amounts of money that you would like Coraline. It's based off of a Neil Gaiman novel. It's stop motion, and same director of Nightmare on Before Christmas. It's worth your time. Anyway, we're here to talk about Kubo.
Kubo, yeah. Kubo. It had a lot going for it. It had all different kind of characters. It had, parents, relationship with parents, relationship, there was the idea of loss as well, losing a parent, also losing a parent while your parent's still alive. That was happening, in the movie with memory loss. That's some heavy stuff. That was, and also things that they were kind of revealing as you were watching it, which is, made things interesting. Maybe I should have seen things coming, but not so much.
No.
But that's okay. I enjoyed it more.
No. Well, like I said, the structure is kind of familiar, but the delivery isn't familiar necessarily. Yeah. I think that in about the end of the first act, things go really bad for Kubo. It starts really bad for Kubo, but he's just a baby. He doesn't really understand what's happening to him then.
He lost his eye.
Yeah. But when he's exposed to the sisters and, his mom is taken from him definitively and he wakes up alone, we kind of hit character bottom for him. That's when all of a sudden Beetle shows up. And it's kind of right in the nick of time, right before things got too dark to be enjoyable for the kids.
Right. Yeah.
I
I
think
also thought yeah.
it's just well placed because Kubo needs a pep talk, and he needs a laugh, and he needs a smile, and so does the audience at this time. So that's nice.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a good relief. Yeah. It's structured well. Really hard on the grandfathers in this movie.
Yeah. Ray Fiennes.
Yeah. It's tough on the grandfathers. Not much sympathy there. But because I was even wondering, I was like, ooh. Hey kids, don't watch this with your grandfather. But then they kind of like made it work at the end. The grandfather forgot all the horrible things he did.
Yeah, so that makes it okay.
And they just pretended he.
Man, speaking as somebody who works in a drunk tank, the but I don't remember it defense just doesn't fly with me.
I don't know. That's some sort of form of psychology.
There, you said that it was some kind of psychology, and then I lost you for a minute there.
Okay, so it was some kind of psychology or some kind of coping mechanism that they had.
Right. Yeah. And it's a nice thing to teach the kids that.
Yeah, if you didn't have a good experience with a family member, just make up one.
Yes. Poor Ray Fiennes.
Yeah.
I feel like he got, Oscar nominated for Schindler's List, and now he's like the go-to bad guy. But he can play really nice, likable characters.
I think so, yeah. There's sort of some Raiders of the Lost Ark stuff happening in this movie also. It reminded me of like the opening of Raiders of the Lost Ark when Jonas gets that head, was it like a monkey head or something? And,
right.
And then all chaos is happening, and they had that kind of thing happening as well. Like when he gets the sword, and the sword is a skeleton is crumbling down, and it had this like action adventure thing that was accelerating.
Yeah, they definitely keep things moving in that sort of over-the-top way. And they use the animation. Like, one thing that's kind of been strange in more modern animation is that there's, like, animated movies that seem, like, unnecessarily animated. It's, like, a bunch of a family having a discussion at the kitchen table, and, like, there's nothing outlandish, there's nothing stylized about it. Like, there's nothing that says this needed to be animated. Which isn't to say that this movie wouldn't stand on its own as text or as like a live action movie, but it uses the animation to the most of it to its best effect.
Yeah, it definitely accomplished things that you probably you couldn't accomplish in a live action movie. I don't think, unless you added the animation or CG.
Well, and you got a giant monkey and a giant beetle.
You work throughout. It would help with like turn itself into the soldiers and birds and all that kind of stuff. That was visually stimulating.
The Charlize Theron voices the mother and monkey.
Yeah, the monkey.
So, like, once mom is gone, she sort of, like, morphs into this monkey character. Like, obviously it's a protective figure, and she's doing all the things that his mom wasn't able to do. But, what did you think of that whole angle of the story? Like, what is monkey, like, the relationship between him and monkey, is that what he wanted the relationship between him and his mom to truly be? Like,
yeah, I guess so. I mean... Well, I guess spoiler. We can give spoilers.
Absolutely.
Right? The monkey is the mom.
Yeah.
And that was what I was talking about earlier. That's what I didn't see coming. I didn't realize that. But the monkey definitely was motherly. She was strict, and then she was caring for him as well. So what was the question? What did I think of like his
I thought for me the tell was that they used the same voice. Like Charlize Theron was the voice of his mom and the monkey. But I guess, I mean, it worked, but did you think that relationship worked? Or like, it was one of the things about it was an interesting element of the plot, but I'm not sure what note was being played, or like as a child what I would have made of the monkey being his mom at the end.
What I thought, I mean, it was... How would I have responded if I was a child watching it? Probably just enjoying a little monkey character because I like that. But I did understand that he had a prior relationship with the monkey, because the monkey was this charm that he had been carrying around.
Yeah.
So, so I did have an understanding that there was some kind of relationship there. It was, I didn't realize it was his mom.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like a stranger, even though you don't have much of a relationship with a figurine you're carrying around, but you got something. Look, I've got right here. I can show you. I have a. This is a Funko of Steve from Stranger Things.
There you go.
And if this thing came alive, we wouldn't be starting at square one. We have some kind of relationship here.
But if it's a Funko that just sits on your desk or whatever, it's sort of like a little prop. But if it's something you carry on your person your entire life, it almost becomes an affect of your personality. Right? It's interesting.
Yeah.
So I don't know what else to say other than to gush, man. Like, it's a solid adventure. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It's it's familiar, but in its presentation, sort of definitely earns its individual points. Like, it's one of those rare movies that it's like, I can't think of a good reason anyone wouldn't get something out of it. You might not love it like I do, but I can't imagine anyone hating Kubo.
No, and I wanted to point out that it was really beautiful. There were scenes with facial expressions of the monkey where you just see like the caring and the change of emotions that they were showing in that.
It's always impressive to see an animated character thinking, and we get that with Monkey.
Yeah. There was like warmth because Monkey kind of started out as kind of a hard character. Yeah, strict character, and then there's just like this warmth that comes on, and it's just done like so. It's a very slight alteration of the expressions. It was really well.
No,
done. I would assume they worked with some actors. I'm sure they probably had some actors working, just observing somebody for that.
Well, I mean, Charlize Theron seems to know what she's doing. Matthew McConaughey, I mean, I know he's make fun of a bull, but he does. He can act.
Yeah. And the only thing I'd like to say something about the song. They used that George Harrison song.
While My Guitar Gently Weeps from Regina Spektor. Yeah.
Regina Spektor, yeah. That was great.
Yeah. Well, I love that song and I like that artist, so that was a pretty easy sell to me. Although, kind of a strange choice for the movie, I guess. Like, it's a much more modern song for a much kind of an ancient feeling story,
Yeah. Yeah.
But, worth it.
Yeah.
Good enough?
Yeah.
Are you the one they call Beowulf? Such a strong man you are. A man like you could own the greatest tale ever sung. Beowulf, stay with me. Give me a son, and I shall make you the greatest king that ever lived. This, I swear. You will forever be king. Forever strong. Mighty. Beyond imagination.
What are you?
What a strange career Robert Zemeckis has had. I mean, he's always wanted to be right on the cutting edge of special effects and like filmmaking and sort of pushing the form. And sometimes it really pays off for him. Like, I love Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and I will always love Who Framed Roger Rabbit. the Back to the Future trilogy is and kind of, especially that first movie, the kind of immortal cinema in a lot of ways. Like, I am not the biggest Forrest Gump guy, but I get why people love Forrest Gump. I think it's a 3-star movie instead of a 5-star movie, but...
How dare you?
How dare you? I love Castaway. I think, but he got into this... I want to sort of push animation and be again on the cutting edge of this, as he had for all of these other times in his sort of creative life. But the problem with he did the Polar Express, he did Beowulf, he did A Christmas Carol. At the time they come out, they do look amazing, and they are at the tippity top of the form. But the form moves so quickly nowadays that Beowulf, as impressive as it was when it came out in 2007, sort of looks like cutscenes from a video game a little bit when you're watching it now. You can tell that a real filmmaker made it in the organization of the shots and the casting. Like, they definitely noticed the awesomeness of Ray Winstone before anyone else. And it was kind of interesting to affect Ray Winstone's powerful voice and energy into this animated figure who doesn't look really anything like Ray Winstone at all. Whereas, like, some of the other characters, Anthony Hopkins looks like Anthony Hopkins, Malkovich looks like Malkovich. Angela Jolie looks naked.
Yeah, she's the siren.
Yeah, but again, this is a strange one. And like another movie we're going to be talking about, I guess because they went so hard and violent and epically sort of dark with it, it sort of becomes, well, who's the movie for after a certain point? Like, the kids are going to have to stay at home because of the level of violence, but the level of silliness and uncanny valley is probably going to keep a lot of the adults out of the theater too. And the older it gets, the more the flaws are very obvious, and the more the really good stuff, which I do think that there is, people tend to gloss over. I love Crispin Glover's portrayal of Grendel, the creature that comes and slaughters all of the people in the kingdom and who Beowulf is hired to kill. It seems really sensitive to sound and communicates mainly through screams, but I really feel Crispin Glover giving this performance through the animation. And in scenes that work in the movie, I think it really shows what this kind of animation can do. But I think that Beowulf will sort of be just that marker in the sand. This is where we were in 2007. So if you want to see what 2007 cutting edge rotoscoping animation looks like, here it is. But 5 or 10 years later, there's more life behind the character's eyes, and there's more details that take it a little bit out of the uncanny and into that sort of consistent world. It doesn't have to be a real world, it just has to be consistent enough that we buy it. So I like Beowulf, but I want to love it. Like, if I saw this movie when I was 12 or 13, it would have blown my mind. Right. So, like, I can't outright dismiss it, but it's just one of Robert Zemeckis' sort of strange experiments. I will say, of the animated movies that he spent 10 years of his career working on, this is my favorite of those 3, but considering where he came from, Zemeckis, has done better. He's done better movies than this.
Oh, yeah. Like, Robert Zemeckis is such a genius that I would, if I met him, I would, like, take a flashlight and look into his ear to see if I could somehow make out the genius in there. It's like, my God. That he's done great work. And he's done, like, different kinds of work, Like, in the early days, he directed he wrote with Bob Gale, I believe. They wrote 1941.
Yeah.
For Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
He directed a couple of movies early on, and then he did, Back to the Future is one of my all-time favorite movies.
Well, I think Romancing the Stone was what put him on the map as a director.
That was another one, yeah.
Which was basically a copycat in Raiders of the Lost Ark at the time, but it made a lot of money, and it got him in a position to make Back to the Future. And after that, the rest was history. So
it sure was, yeah. I'm a Forrest Gump. There is slight backlash. I love
I don't want to take your love of Forrest Gump away from you. It's not my job.
It's really close to get to being schmaltzy, so I can get it. It almost gets schmaltzy, but no, I don't think it quite hits that.
Right.
I think that was a really tricky movie to make work, and they really made that work.
Yeah. Well, I would love to get into Forrest Gump, but I will fall down a rabbit hole if I go into Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's a 3-star movie. I think it's a good movie. I just don't think it's one of the greatest movies of the 90s, you know. Like, the fact that it won over Pulp Fiction and Shawshank Redemption just makes me want to pull my eyes out of my face. But
all right. We'll leave that alone, then.
But, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that he experiments, and you know, when you experiment, you fail. He did this recent Pinocchio movie, which I shouldn't speak on because I haven't seen, but by all accounts, is not very good.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one.
But strange choices are in Beowulf. Like, what was with the scene? Okay, like, we want to establish he's the greatest kick-ass, badass hero ever. Like, I get that. And, like, he can swim across the ocean while fighting sea creatures. And they show us that in a really wonderfully over-the-top animated sequence. Great. But then he decides just to take it up an extra level, and he's going to fight Grendel naked. And they have this entire fight sequence with this, like, Austin Powers kind of sort of humor where they're going out of their way to obscure the nudity. Strangely, this scene happened again in a recent movie called The Northman, to the point where it just becomes, like, distracting and ridiculous. But it's a fun scene. It's a fun, air quote, scene, and I like the action in it, but it is also ridiculous. And this movie seems to be unashamed to occasionally just go as hard and ridiculous as possible. Sometimes to its benefit, and sometimes to its detriment.
Yeah, and they definitely present Beowulf as a character. They present him as a hero, but like a flawed hero. They make it clear that he is exaggerating in some of his heroicness.
He would almost have to be. But then when we see what he can do, he's pretty impressive during these fights.
Yeah.
So
he doesn't have to lie, but he's making some stuff up. Now, this is definitely a movie that young people are seeing.
Yeah.
Because people get assigned this when they're in high school, and I'm sure they're watching this.
I haven't read the original text, or I guess it's transcribed because it was originally an oral tale or whatever. But I'm gonna guess that some liberties were taken here.
Well, what I heard, because I got to watch it behind the scenes, I actually got the DVD of it. Oh, you have a DVD also?
I do.
Yeah, so they have the behind the scenes stuff, and Neil Gaiman, I think he was saying, they were talking about, because Beowulf was a story told for the years, was orally told, because they didn't even write down. It was a story before they even wrote down stories. When they finally started writing it down, they said it was the monks, these religious monks, were writing it down. So the monks left out some things that they that they didn't like, that weren't in line with their beliefs. So Neil Gaiman and Roger Avary, they put back in what they assumed was originally in.
Right.
So the violence and all kinds of stuff.
Well, and it does have that sort of pleasing, Conan bar maiden. They like to eat meat off the bone and drink, beer out of big, huge mugs and carouse and are rowdy dude bros, right?
Yes. Yeah, it wasn't very progressive
No.
in terms of male-female relationships. But, back then things probably were pretty,
Actually,
pretty ruling.
Which puts me in mind of Robin Wright, because she plays the woman who's married to the Anthony Hopkins character, who Anthony Hopkins is given a full-bore performance here, and as much as he's full of fun and energy, you really get the feeling like he wouldn't be a great guy to be married to. But interestingly, Robin Wright went on, 10 or 15 years later to do this movie called Robin Wright at the Congress. And the conceit of that movie is that actual actors sign over their image so that their body is scanned and their features are scanned. They do this performance where they do all these different range of emotions. and then the studio owns them, and they can plug them into any movie that they want to use for any character, be it porn, be it action, be it whatever. Robin Wright can live her life, and they have this avatar Robin Wright that they can use to make movies. That's the conceit of the movie. And as she was being interviewed for that, she kind of said, that happened to me. They scanned my entire body, and they scanned my performance when they made Beowulf. And that image still exists somewhere. That all of that computer information on Robin Wright is still out there.
Oh, so she's afraid that they will use this.
Well,
these images and stuff, or she's just aware that could happen.
It's just an interesting thing that she ended up doing both of these movies, because one seems to be almost a comment on the other. Unfortunately,
so she actually voluntarily went through this. This other movie you're talking about, it's like her actually going through this whole thing.
That's right. Yeah.
The whole process. Yeah.
Yeah. And in the movie, she plays Robin Wright, which is what makes it interesting. Like, Robin Wright is selling her avatar to Hollywood.
So it's not a documentary.
No. It's a science fiction movie. And it's half animated.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah. Robin Wright at the Congress. It's an interesting movie.
Wow.
It's a strange, weird connection that I made when I was watching this. It's also funny because in this movie, unfortunately, it's a very typical Robin Wright role in that she's a really good actress and she's doing what she can, but there's just not a lot to the part, which seems to be her fate. Zemeckis likes her. Of course, she was Jenny in Forrest Gump. And again, I do think she's one of these actresses who... she's a little bit pigeonholed because she was in a few classics, right? She was in The Princess Bride and she was in Forrest Gump, and so that's what people see her as. And I think Robin Wright has serious game, so I would put her in my movie.
Yeah. Okay. She might be up for that. Now, what do you think was the motivation for even, like, making this movie? Because I watch it and I think... if I had just randomly saw a clip of it, I might not even think it's animated at first, because it depends. It depends what scene I was watching, but I might just think, or I might even think that by thinking well, why even animate this? I know from watching the behind the scenes thing that it was moving, that their shoot moved a lot quicker.
Yes.
That they were able to be way more efficient. So maybe that was it. Maybe it was kind of experiment.
Well, I do think that was part of it. Like I said, Zemeckis is trying to push the film genre, and he has done so successfully in the past. Like I said, Roger Rabbit was a game changer at the time, and I do think will be kind of an immortal movie. And I think he's looking for ways to do that again. For whatever flaws Beowulf has, I mean, it's ambitious. Let's give it that much. And I do think it's the kind of movie only Robert Zemeckis could force into being, I want to make this expensive rotoscoped CGI monster movie with a hard R and again, stacking the deck against yourself.
Yeah. So Zemeckis is very comfortable being in post then. That's what's going on.
I guess.
He's doing most of his work in post, and that's just amazing. See, that's a real genius. I mean, most people can't pull that out because he's got to be able to see. So when he's actually producing the movie, when he's in the production of the movie, he can see ahead of it. He can see ahead how this is all going to serve him in post, which is while he's actually making the movie, actually shooting the movie.
He can see it.
Yeah, while he's shooting it, he can see ahead of time how he's going to be handling this in the post production, which I assume the post production would period than the actual production of it.
Oh, it's with a movie like this, guaranteed.
A little more involved. Yeah. But I wouldn't know where to say. I wouldn't know where to start.
No.
I mean, there's probably not a lot of people who could make a movie like this.
Well, and that's why I respect it. I mean, I don't think it 100% works, but I have a lot of respect for it. And basically, it's the same way I feel about Zemeckis. This is a guy, when he was making Castaway, Tom Hanks had to lose a lot of weight. So Tom Hanks took, I think, 8 months to lose the weight. And in the time in between, Zemeckis shot What Lies Beneath. He made another movie while he was waiting for this one to He did a live-action movie of Man on Wire about the French performer who strung a line between the two towers of the World Trade Center and walked it. And he shot it so well that in IMAX footages of the movie, people were fleeing the theater and getting vertigo and throwing up. Like, he knows what he's doing. He's like, if Zemeckis' name is on it, it's worth watching. I mean, I'm sure, even I haven't seen this Pinocchio movie. I guarantee you it's not, incompetent in its execution. It's probably a script problem or just why is this movie being made kind of problem. And like the whole Disney live action remake is being viewed very suspiciously lately. And I think this movie is part of why. But I congratulate him for trying to push the medium forward. And I like that he was telling the story. Again, 13-year-old Larry, this is the greatest movie ever made, Larry in his 40s, I get it, I like it, but again, it's 2007, and the eyes look a little soft and unfocused, and it's just where animation was then. That's the catch when you're at the edge of the technology. The edge just keeps moving.
Yeah, I think it was. This was a movie that I was aware of. I had not seen it before. I don't know if I would have, just because I just didn't have.
There's only so much time.
Oh yeah. So I love Crispin Glover. It's also interesting because Crispin Glover at one point had a lawsuit, a successful lawsuit against, I think, not specifically Robert Zemeckis, but it was he had a lawsuit against Spielberg and
he wanted more money for Back to the Future 2. They wouldn't give it to him, so they hired another actor but used his likeness. So his lawsuit made it impossible for any other filmmaker to do that again.
Yeah. So
but obviously Zemeckis didn't take it personally, so...
No. So I thought that was... I was thinking that was interesting. But no, I'm glad that I saw this movie. I guess it's not just up my alley in terms of my interest, but I never saw the Polar Express, and I haven't seen Pinocchio.
Well,
I saw Flight.
You saw Flight. There you go. It had moments.
It is very interesting to see this in terms of just the experiment that it is, and the spectacle of it, I guess. That Angelina Jolie is the irresistible siren.
Oh yeah, I think that it does give you your money's worth in the spectacle, and it is loud and proud and over the top in a deliberate way. It's not like it doesn't know that it's going at 100% the whole time. So I appreciate that it knows what it is. I do think that some people will find it a little bit much.
Yeah.
About him. He doesn't love you. You just don't understand him. Birdboy has a demon inside. How do I help you? Tell me.
I'll hunt you down.
The only thing that really scares me is the thought of being stuck on this island forever.
We need a boat. Hi, kids.
When you learn to fly, will you take me with you?
All right, welcome to easily the strangest movie in this list. Birdboy, The Forgotten Children is a post-apocalyptic animated film with a bunch of cute animals that look like they've been pulled off of some charming, toddler cartoon that you'd watch on Treehouse. There's little bunnies and little puppies and little foxes and the titular bird boy. And there's an explosion at the factory on this island, and it has destroyed the environment and blasted the land. And everybody is still trying to live their lives as normal, even though this change has taken place. And there's a group of kids that are trying to leave their homes to try and find a better life, either off this island or some sort of sane, normal place on it. And, wow, I mean, the two big questions that I will have, and I don't even know that I have answers for you, Kurt, right out of the gate, is who is this movie for, number one, and what is this movie about, number two? Like, you could say it's about environmental things. You could say it's about children dealing with death. You could say it's about the battle between the youth and authority, or youth and parents. There's a little bit of racism. There's one little fox character who seems to be like the sweetest, nicest kid, but because he's the smallest, he's just made fun of and belittled by all of the other ones. Like, it's about everything, and it's kind of about nothing. Like, I don't know. I don't know. It's all over the place. It's definitely got a very distinct, strong identity. Like, it's individual. Like, you can't compare it to anything else.
No.
But, like, it's so out there strange. And I don't know what a kid would make of it. It would just melt their brain and break their heart and then send them to bed crying. This is usually the type of movie that I can really, really get behind, too. Like, I like these sort of complicated, animated films that are about the death of childhood or the death of innocence that, in a way, are more effective to adults than to the kids that they're being made for. But I don't know. This might have gone a little bit further even than that. So, I guess I'm at the place where I want to like and understand the movie, but where I sit right now, I kind of don't. Like, I'm just mystified by it. But I don't think it deserves the fate it was given, because they spent a lot of money on it, and it bombed. I mean, again, I don't know who the audience was for it or what they thought was going to be the result. But, yeah, a lot of, I think, very talented people made this very distinct vision, and it laid an egg. So, I don't think it deserves to be dismissed. I would encourage people to watch it. But I have a hard time describing it or even saying, like, what about it works for me and what about it doesn't. I think in its own way, it's just distinctness makes it worthy of attention somehow. What any one individual will make out of it, it depends on who you are and where you are, I think. And maybe that is, at the end, the strength of the movie. It can mean what you need it to mean on that day, I guess. But, again, much like Beowulf, it's ambitious, but I'm not sure what it achieved. So, help me out, Kurt.
Yes. Well, if I heard that description, I would want to watch it immediately.
Okay,
I'd
good.
have to see what this is all about. But I did enjoy this movie just because it was so weird, and the images were very striking too. I thought this was also a beautiful film in a whole different way, you know. So I enjoyed that. But yes, no, I would give high praise this movie. My feeling is I want to watch this again.
Right.
I want to see this again.
Give it some time, and then go round two.
Kind of, because there are scenes in it that are just disturbing. Like, they're gonna torture one of the kids. It's like they're getting ready to do that, and it's like, oh no, yeah. But I'm all for this. Yeah, it's a dark stuff, but I'm all for it. I enjoy. They took some big swings here.
Yes. But
I appreciate that, and it didn't. I guess on the whole, trying to arrive at the right word here, but just all the elements put together as a full narrative movie. Maybe it didn't all add up, as well as it should have. But I certainly enjoyed the risk, and yeah, I do agree with you. Like, who is the audience, and that's probably the reason why it wasn't successful. I'm seeing here, Wikipedia, it was made for, doesn't say $1 million, it seems to say £1 million, maybe, and then it made 54,845.
Yeah, that's not good.
No, and I don't know. It's definitely, the audience is not kids, because kids are being tortured and killed, running away from home, and just
stealing drugs from their parents and giving them out to their friends.
Stealing drugs. They're distributing drugs along the land. They run into the old mouse who has broken dreams. I found that depressing.
Well, and BIRDBOY himself, his father has died, and he's being hunted. He's this sort of weird, ghostly-looking figure, and he has to take these pills or else he has the nightmares. So, yeah, drug abuse, add that to the list of things this movie might or might not be about. But his nightmares that he has are genuinely troubling. But the fact that the only thing that will save him from those nightmares is drug addiction is genuinely troubling. And, like, it's not resolved. Like, he lives a miserable life.
Well, this is a movie for, you can't make movies like this on this scale, but it's kind of like a midnight movie. It's like an oddity.
Yeah.
But, you're not, those kind of movies, they're not going to make huge box office. People don't make a movie to be that way. It becomes that,
Well, and again, it's not if you're doing an animated film, it's not going to be cheap. And if you're doing an animated film on abstraction, you're going to limit your audience. So, that's why we don't get lots of movies like Waking Life. I love Waking Life. If you've ever seen Richard...
I have.
I love that movie, but I get why, it didn't start like this flow of, adult-oriented animated philosophical vignettes, because nobody's lining up for that. So I guess we have to respect that this movie exists.
I do. I'm giving it high marks because I really had to say, well, what movie really affected me the most? Like I said, I appreciate the images. I do like the characters. Like you were saying, there's these cute little bunny rabbits putting this like apocalyptic horror. I mean, listen, if I'm going to see something that I've never seen before, I'm here for it.
Yeah, and this is definitely individual. You have not seen this before. And the rendering of the explosion, and all of the people at the plant are instantly, disintegrated. But they show it wash out across the lands and the devastation that it wreaks.
I also had to,
And that's where we start. That's where the movie starts.
But there's also, I didn't make too many notes, but there was at one point, and it's almost like a throwaway thing, like the mother of the bunny holds this, like a Jesus squeeze doll, right, and squeezes it, and blood is coming from its eyes.
Well, and that's where we get to some of, again, I'm being positive, but there are things in the movie that just make me wonder, why was that there? What does this scene mean? There are scenes that, the kids are going to try and break away from their world and try to establish a new life, but then they have the isolated scenes, like you say, with the old fellow and his terrible story.
Depressing.
And the other children being taught to shoot by the militaristic sort of apparatus. And to go to spoiler territory, very sudden death of BIRDBOY towards the end of the movie, where he's shot out of the sky by a kid who doesn't...
And he's fished out of the sea.
Yeah. But the kid who shoots him didn't particularly want to do it. He was just, following orders. And I don't know... It's a kid's, because it's an animated movie, my brain kept on wanting to treat it like a kid's movie. And I just kept on asking, what does this mean? And I kept on coming up empty. And, some of the stuff, yes, but a lot of the stuff, no. And if I get enough of that, I'm not sure why it's here. This is a non sequitur. I start to question whether or not the creators had an answer. I don't mind if it's a little bit sort of mysterious or if you're going to hold your cards close to the chest, but I want to believe that you, as the creator, have an answer. And I suspect that sometimes they did, but sometimes maybe they did not.
Okay. I think I give some leeway because I do enjoy apocalyptic stories, or at least I have. And I guess I guess I see it in terms of, like, if there's an apocalypse, it's like then the rules have changed, you know.
Yeah.
So I kind of give it, I guess you could say, leeway in that
sense. And who's to say? Maybe everybody's half crazy, and because of this the survival situation that they're in, we have to sort of take everything with a grain of salt. But yes, it is very adult in all of its themes in that way, which is strange for a movie about little talking bunny rabbits. I like it. I just don't know where to sit on it. Like I will watch it again.
That's why I need to watch it again.
Yeah. And I will watch it
watch
again.
it again.
And that's sort of maybe the reason that in the end we'll end up in a positive place. Excuse me. Like, every now and then when I feel like watching something visual that's going to, like, that I know will stimulate me at least in that level, which is part of the big appeal of animation. But I got enough brain cells working around upstairs that I want to try and solve a puzzle. I will come back to it. It's not obtuse. And if I came off that way, I didn't mean to. I mean, if it was an animated movie that was just about nuclear devastation, it would be When the Wind Blows, right? There's that British animated movie, or The Grave of the Fireflies. And those are both really devastating and depressing. I not that this movie isn't devastating or that it isn't depressing, but it's more interesting and beautiful than it is devastating and depressing. So,
right.
Points.
Yes.
I don't know what else to say about BIRDBOY because I don't know what else to say about BIRDBOY. You got anything else for me, brother?
I think we sold it.
Okay.
I think we sold it. I think I really look forward to watching this movie again and seeing what I get out of the second experience, because I think I might really enjoy it, the second experience.
It'll help knowing what you're getting into.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. It's one of those weird things where, like you said, it's your own interpretation of things, kind of guiding you along. It's one of those things.
Not for the kids.
Let's Eraserhead. You watch Eraserhead. What on earth?
Let's do a kids version of Eraserhead.
Yes, that was probably the pitch. So somebody said yes.
And then they're all mystified. Why did no one show up?
He has been hailed as one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. This summer, Hayao Miyazaki, director of the Academy Award-winning Spirited Away, releases his next masterpiece.
We've all been waiting for you. The whole world is out of balance. Ponyo, you have to trust me. You're the only one who can save the planet. Do it now. Do it!
Walt Disney Pictures presents a Studio Ghibli film featuring the voices of Liam Neeson, Noah Cyrus, Frankie Jonas, Tina Fey, Betty White, Cloris Leachman, Lily Tomlin, Matt Damon, and Kate Blanchett.
Good luck, Ponyo.
What is that?
Hayao Miyazaki. I think probably one of the greatest living filmmakers that we have, although I think he's largely retired. I'm a big fan of his catalog, which is interesting because I'm not a big anime guy. Like, I'm not one of these people that grew up in that sort of corner of the entertainment spectrum. But I find there's a richness to his storytelling and to the animation that make all of his movies distinct and stand out. Ponyo is supposedly loosely based on the, fairy tale of the Little Mermaid, but only in that it's it's about as like the original story as "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou" is to the Iliad, right? It's sort of suggested by the tale of the Little Mermaid, and everybody involved in the story is significantly younger. So the love story between them is really that of childhood friendship than it is of, passionate love. Like, I'm going to abandon my entire kingdom of the sea and everything that I know because of this boy that I saw once who I think is cute. That sort of part of the movie or the story is sort of dismissed. But it's not that story I feel like Hayao is interested in. I think it's the kids themselves. I think that Ponyo and this little boy who befriends her are so well rendered as like excitable, sweet, adventurous children that they feel real in a movie that is just full of abstraction and absurdity. I love the underwater world that we're subjected to. I love the lengths that this little girl goes to get her friend. This huge flood that she's participating in and chasing him around. The visuals alone, like just on that. You could turn the sound off and watch Ponyo, and I think that you'll probably see the appeal of the... on a story level, it's a lot more simple and base than we're used to from Miyazaki. I think this one's for younger kids. It's sort of closer to My Neighbor Totoro in that way that I think the adults will still enjoy it, but that he's primarily interested in putting a smile on the face of children. And I think largely he will here. When this island community is flooded, these two kids, one of the ocean, one of the land world, go on a quest to find this boy's mom who's been stranded at this old age home where she works. She's got to take care of the old folks, but she's desperately worried about her son. And it's sort of a journey for the parents to be reunited with her kid. And it's a visual spectacle on their way to it. And I guess, if I'm really honest, there's not much more deeper to it beyond that surface story. But I love the characters, and I love how beautiful the movie is. It might not rank high on the scale of Miyazaki movies, but I'm a Miyazaki fan, so you're not going to hear me say too much shit about it. It's sweet and it's charming, and that's all it really wants to be. So I think it's successful on that level. But is it Princess Mononoke? Is it Spirited Away? Well, of course, no, it's not. It's Ponyo. Where are you standing on this one?
Ponyo. Well, I have not seen his other movies. I believe I saw My Neighbor... What's the movie
Totoro?
called? My Neighbor Totoro. I think I've seen that some years ago. The other ones I haven't seen.
Well, if you like animation, I encourage you to explore.
I need to catch up.
Yeah.
I do, yeah. Yeah, Ponyo, it's very sweet. You know, it's very sweet and whimsical. I liked all the little babies that were kind of always swimming around. I was a little concerned for them because there were so many of them that they could get lost very easily, and there was priority over Ponyo.
Well, you froze up there. The priority over Ponyo?
Ponyo had priority. She was like the number one sibling.
Right.
Otherwise, there were these little babies just swimming around. And
there was Ponyo, and then there was a school of other babies.
Yes, yeah.
Fujimoto is sort of the Poseidon figure, the king of the sea, and in the English language version, he's voiced by Liam Neeson, and he comes off somewhere between like pissed off and crazy, but is still not presented as a villain for some reason. It seems like everything he does is kind of unnecessarily damaging and unnecessarily aggressive, but the movie never really wants us to hate him or anyone for some reason.
Well, he's presented as kind of a villain when he's first walking around outside the water,
right?
His own land. He's kind of like a villain because the mother's kind of like, she's not too happy to see him. He's there to take Ponyo away, but then they quickly kind of back off from that.
Yeah, I don't think this one is interested in the conflict. It's more interested in sort of a sweet adventure. I love how excitable the little fish girl is when she's running on the back of all of the creatures to catch up to the car and when she like tackles Ponyo or tackles him with a hug when she sees him and knocks him over, like this aggressive childish excitement is a little bit infectious to me. I think that's the vibe that he's tapping into. He also likes to base the characters' drawings off of real kids that he knows in the real world to try and affect their personality. The other interesting thing about Miyazaki animation is, I'm a little bit ignorant of exactly, but most animated films do a certain amount of frames per second. And as a rule, Miyazaki's animated films will do 2 or 3 times that amount to give a much more smooth look to the animation. It's much more time-consuming and much more expensive to do the animation that way. But the trade-off is, especially in this one, he's very focused on, obviously, the oceanic sort of aquatic life. It seems weird to say reality to. There's a reality to the sea life in this movie that I don't think comes across in cheaper made animation, I guess is what I'll say.
Right.
And that fine line between sea creatures that we recognize and see and know to be real, and then the imagination of the animators sort of filling in the other holes.
I think this is a movie that I would have enjoyed too. You're asking before, like, for some of the other movies, what would you enjoy as a kid? I would have enjoyed this as like a little kid. It would have been so much fun to watch this kind of visuals, and it might even work for babies. Babies might even enjoy just the shapes and the colors and.
Well, in the base simplicity, they live on a house on the hill, and the old age home's on another house on another hill, and they get in this little toy boat, and they float from one hill to the other. It's very sort of simple, but lovely.
So what? That's a wide audience, huh? From
Beowulf to
babies. No, I'm saying the audience for Ponyo, you got babies, you got kids, adults.
Yeah.
You know.
I think that he has done more adult movies, like Spirited Away, which I think if you put a gun to my head and said, what's your favorite Miyazaki movie? I would say Spirited Away. But it's like an Alice in Wonderland type of story where they put a character in a place that I have never seen anything like that. I don't know what's going to be behind any door. Every character is completely new and original, and it's so rare for me, because I'm such a movie freak, to be watching something where I just don't know what I'm going to get in the next scene, but I know it's going to be amazing.
Okay, I can see that.
I don't want to put Ponyo on the same level as that, because it just isn't. Like, this is a nice kids escapist fantasy, and the world needs these. And it is beautiful, I say. Like, when they're looking down from the boat into the water, and you can see the creatures just below the surface, and the layers of the detail, I mean, it's lovely. But it's not profound. And I think Spirited Away and Princess Mononoke and some of the other ones, almost to the risk of turning off the younger audience, become more ambitious, sort of as a piece of fantasy or science fiction or whatever any individual piece is. And they get great actors to voice in this. Like, this movie has Kate Blanchett, Matt Damon, and Liam Neeson. Like, it's crazy. Everybody wants to be associated with his work. It's not... I encourage you, if you like animation, seek out Miyazaki. Like, I think Ponyo would be somewhere in the middle of his sort of oeuvre for me. So if you liked Ponyo, consider that there's probably 8 or 10 movies above that in his selections. So.
Okay, well, I'll watch these movies.
And Tina Fey voices the mother, interestingly. I believe it was Tina Fey.
Yes, it's Tina Fey. Yes, she plays Lisa.
And I think that character is the trickiest in that, like, you'd want to play that mother as just losing her mind with fear and like, my son is going to be dead, the whole island is drowned. But if she plays that note, it becomes scary and stressful instead of sort of wistful and fun. So it's a measured performance, but I've always been a Tina Fey fan. I kind of like that she's included here.
Yes. I worked on the very last. I was an extra. I was an extra in this. No, I guess it was an extra on the last filmed episode of the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt.
Oh, nice.
And I looked, and Tina Fey was the
producer,
creator of that show, and she usually wasn't on set. I don't know. This was the last show she was there, and I just kind of looked over. She gave me this little smile. I was like, "Hey, Tina Fey."
And in the midst of all this chaos, two people fall in love.
Exactly. That's the pitch.
Is there anything else you want to say about Ponyo? I feel like I've been brief on it, but it's a pretty simple story, and it's pretty easy to please. Like, if you're in the mood for something like childish and spectacle, then this is what you got.
It's very, it's obviously it's well done, to say the least. It's very good. Yeah.
I must tell you about NIMH. Look there. It's a fantasy with wizards and villains. And heroes.
I ain't scared of nothing. I'm not even afraid of the Great Owl. Will you hush up?
Come on. It's an odyssey to another world. A world of fantasy and enchantment.
To what you see and hear, you must swear absolute secrecy.
It's the most beautiful sight I've ever seen.
Do you like me?
Of course I like you.
It's a story of friendship.
I mean, you don't think I'm clumsy or anything. What? I just need a few pointers to polish my style. I told you you'd love flying.
I don't know how I let you talk me into this.
It's a classic story of courage.
Why have you come?
And a world of danger.
If I hadn't actually been near a cat, I'd be sneezing my brains out. I'm allergic to hay. Excuse me, pardon me.
Get out! Run for your lives! Run!
Don Bluth is the director of The Secret of NIMH, which came out in 1982. He and a bunch of the animators had used to work for Disney, but they broke off and tried to make their own sort of competitive brand with Disney. And obviously it didn't play out, as Disney continues to slowly close its white-gloved hand over the world. But as a little kid, I remember really liking The Secret of NIMH, but not fully understanding it. I found it to be a little bit over my head at things. And I found watching it now, my memory of the movie was quite different. I thought that all of the creatures in the story had been experimented on in this medical center and escaped, and that's why they were hyper-intelligent mice. But no, upon watching it this time, only some of the mice are that way. These are anthropomorphic animals because it's just another one of those animated movies where animals talk. But some of them have been experimented on and have become hyper-intelligent, and it's sort of led to a society of mice and rats living close to this NIMH, which, spoilers, is the National Institute for Mental Health, which is, again, one of the things that flew right over my head as a kid. It's a much darker movie in that the first half of the movie deals with a sweet mum mouse trying to save her bedridden, what seems like ready to die son from pneumonia and not getting a lot of help by the colorful characters around her. And then the second half, increasingly scary spectacle of this power struggle and the whole rat culture. There's also a really fucked up creepy owl. That's the thing that I remembered as a little kid that really scared me. And in the context of the movie, the owl's not even a villain necessarily. He's kind of a neutral character. He does eat mice, because he's an owl, but he's also wise, and he also talks to the other mice and is helpful on some occasions. But I think this is one of those movies that's asking quite a lot of its audience, especially in knowing the fact that a lot of the audience is going to be in the single-digit age category. It is for this reason that I think Secret of NIMH sort of occupied a large portion of my imagination for a long time. Like, it's difficult subject matter, and the stakes are high, and mice and rats have sword fights, and people die. The stakes are real, and not that people don't die, I guess, in other Disney movies, but there's something more visceral about The Secret of NIMH. I felt like as a kid they were taking me seriously with this movie,
right.
And I appreciated that. And generally speaking, I do appreciate a movie that does take seriously the subject, no matter who they're talking to. So, yes, the movie mostly works, but I think it works better when you're old enough to kind of get it. It might be better for like the 10 to 14-year-old range than the under 10 range, I guess is what I'm slowly coming around to saying. It did okay.
What was this rated?
I believe it was PG. It was not a G-rated one, but it was before they'd come out with the PG-13 rating, so it might have been closer to a PG-13 if that rating had existed at the time. Between, I believe it was Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and Gremlins, Hollywood decided that, or maybe Poltergeist, Hollywood decided there needed to be another rating between PG and R, and then PG-13 happened. But I don't believe that it existed for this movie. But yeah, that probably would have been the appropriate call in the end of things. Do I like The Secret of NIMH after all of that? Yes, I do. I mean, you can see the Disney influence. There's a Dom DeLuise voiced Crow who's like definitely goofy comic relief in an atmosphere that doesn't seem to be looking for or wanting goofy comic relief. But if it had gone too far to the side, like even further into the darkness, then maybe we would be talking about a BIRDBOY of the 80s. So,
right. Yeah,
I like it. It's a cool spectacle and an adventure, but I can appreciate it more as an adult in a way I don't think I was capable of appreciating it as a kid. That's where I start.
Okay. I did see it when I was a kid. This along with The Last Unicorn were the ones I had seen. I was on HBO or something like that. And it didn't make much of an impact on me. I believe I did enjoy it on some level, but watching it recently, I enjoyed it. Oh, I thought that characters were strong characters.
Yeah, I like the design for sure. They all have their specific physicalities. It's not just another mouse that's a different color.
Right. Yeah, I thought that the animation was pretty good. Had a good. Can't think of an example of it, but there was just this one rat that was the.
I'm trying to remember his name here, but
I got the
Nicodemus was the good old mouse.
Nicodemus. Jenner?
No,
there's someone named Jenner.
Right.
Not Jeremy. That was Dom DeLuise.
Yes. Mrs. Brisby is their main character.
Mrs. Brisby is Elizabeth Hartman. The kids were Shannon Doherty and Will Wheaton.
That's right. Yes.
This was way before they were on anything.
Oh yeah, they were.
Kids, I guess.
They were legitimately children when they were recording these.
Yeah.
But I like that the kids that sound and act like kids in movies, especially in kids movies. Hollywood and animated movies like to have little kids that are like way too smart and way too world-wise for their age and experience level.
Right.
And sometimes having a character like that works, but generally speaking, I prefer kids that act and sound like kids, and that does.
Yeah.
The strange.
Yeah, I would say this movie. I was going to say this movie, much like BIRDBOY, it does take big swings. It's just a little more successful, maybe in the way it kind of hits the mark. But there was definitely some high stakes here. There was scary stuff. Like as you said, one of her kids seemed to be
at death's door.
Yeah, and they had to move that. They had to move their home, or else the tractor was going to plow through and crush them.
Yeah.
That's disturbing.
So she's got to somehow magically heal her son well enough that he can move, or find a way to weather the destruction of the home while saving his life. And then you have the power dynamic of the rats and the whole sort of sub-kingdom, and, you know, that's the stuff that Paul...
And you have, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't quite connect with that as well as when I was a kid. I just sort of got the adventure part of it. There's a story, when we get the back history of the mice that are caught and experimented on. It's a weird, I guess, it's inconsistent, man. This movie's fake. But they show these people catching these rats in the back alley. And the rats and mice just look like rats and mice. They're not wearing clothes. They're not standing on their hind legs. And they're not talking to each other. They're squeaking and running on all fours like mice. And then they're caught and experimented on. And then we see them as a more traditional sort of Disney-esque animated animal figure. But it's not just the mice that are experimented on that have this affectation, right? It's not that they taught everyone else to speak and have this culture. It's just... So why were they originally shown to be, quote, normal mice and rats, I guess would be my question.
Yeah, I understand. It's inconsistent. Like, why is the bird also have a personality and be able to discuss things?
In that way, my memory of the movie is more interesting than the actual movie, because I thought a bunch of mice escaped from the facility, and that's why they were smart, and that's why this little society had managed to be, and that's why they're able to talk to the owl instead of just being eaten by the owl. And I don't know if there's a source material that would iron this out for me, but that's actually kind of really interesting to me, and it's almost too bad. It seems like a missed opportunity here.
Well, I even thought when they reached that point, because obviously I didn't remember that, but when I saw that the mice had scientific experiments, that's why they were smart mice. I thought, well, that's not. Is that really even necessary? Like, I was going along with the fact that mice are, have all this stuff happening. That's like you don't even have to have a reason.
No, like, again, speaking of traumatic animated movies, when I was a kid, I used to watch Watership Down all the time. Everybody could talk in Watership Down, except for dogs. For some reason, dogs just behaved like dogs. So, strange. This movie's fake, man, Kurt. Secret of NIMH, man, I don't know.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. That was inconsistent. I wasn't really bothered by it. I just didn't think it was necessary that they were being experimented on.
No, if you're already an animated talking animal movie, you don't have to overburden yourself with explaining
it's
things.
Fine. They don't have to justify it.
We'll go with
seen
it.
Animals.
Oh, as if Miss
Exactly.
Brisby could talk, you guys. This is bullshit.
Mice don't talk. I'm turning this off.
Fake.
No fun.
I think that they did that in an effort to make them more distinct from Disney. Yeah, it was about talking animals, but this one has a deeper, darker story than Disney would typically have.
Maybe they're also making a statement also. You should experiment on animals or else they'll start talking. I don't know.
Disney was going through their dark times in the 80s where their movies were starting to flop, and I feel like the Black Cauldron and some of the weird, darker corners of the 80s. Again, I don't know this. I'm just sort of pulling it out of my head. It's like, well, they all of a sudden had real competition in the animation field. So if Don Bluth is going dark, well, we better go dark too. So.
Like it also may have gotten them to kick into gear. Like, we can't, had enough of that. Enough of the rescuers.
Well,
we gotta get the Little Mermaid out here.
By the time they get to the end of the 80s, they get Little Mermaid, Aladdin, and a Lion King, and that's pretty much all she wrote. Not that Don Bluth and his, other creative people didn't make more movies, but they've never been really realistically competitive with Disney. No. This movie and The Land Before Time are the two ones that people remember, but there's probably been a half a dozen at least that didn't win place or show, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm trying to see what other ones they did. An American Tail.
That's right.
All dogs
go to heaven.
Go to heaven. Yeah.
So I guess we've heard of them.
I remember. was going to say, I remember the director, Tim Burton, he worked on some of those Disney movies during that week period. And I know he broke himself off because he's like, I don't want to spend a year of my life working on The Fox and the Hound.
Right. Hey, man, I like The Fox and the Hound. Screw you.
You might. When I was a kid, I went to see The Rescuers. I enjoyed it. It wasn't during the Disney heyday, but
that's right.
I got something out of it.
Yeah. Anyway, we've stopped talking about The Secret of NIMH. I think it's worth your time. I think it's definitely of our era from the 80s, but it's competitive with the Disney of that era. I don't know that it's competitive with the Disney of today or of like the golden age, as it were, but it's an interesting, kind of dark kids movie, and I think it's held up quite well.
I think so.
Okay. All right, Kurt, thank you so much for being here. We made this happen. It was months to cook this episode, but here we are. I think we've come through, and thank you for choosing this list. It's a little bit off the beaten path from my regular selections, and I kind of needed this one. I kind of needed the escape and the spectacle of this, so it turned out to be well timed.
Right,
thank
good,
you
I'm
for
glad.
that. What was your least favorite of these 6 animated fantasies, and why?
Well, this was hard ranking because they're really. I did enjoy all these movies, and I and they're all very different.
Very.
And I appreciate all they have to give. But I'm giving the last ranking to The Last Unicorn.
Okay. That's it. That's all. You don't want to justify it.
Well, do I have to justify it? It's just because it's. I'm judging it based on. A lot of this, I'm considering the animation, kind of like the, whether I visually enjoyed it, kind of like the innovation of it. And The Last Unicorn, I did enjoy it. Like I said, I enjoyed all these movies. It was hard to make this ranking, but as I said, some of it was like animation it was a little bit cheaper, it seemed, and didn't really blow me away with that. It didn't have a distinct images like some of these other movies had.
Fair enough. Well,
but I did definitely like the characters and enjoyed it, a lot of it. But that's where it landed.
Fair enough. What about 5th place then?
Well, I gave that to Ponyo, and I enjoy Ponyo. I don't know what to say because I did enjoy all these movies and visually it's good, but I guess my only complaint was just watching it. I guess watching it as an adult, it was maybe a little on the slower side.
It's a pretty basic, simple story by Miyazaki Standal for sure. All right.
Yeah.
In 4th position?
4th, I had, which I did enjoy as an experiment. I also thought it was kind of good. I believe I studied or read BEOWULF years ago, so it was interesting to kind of revisit that story. I know they presented it a different way. A lot of the actors in it I enjoy, like Malkovich, and of course I love Crispin Glover.
Yeah.
So it was. I'm glad I had the experience of watching that.
BEOWULF in 4th.
Yeah, it's 4th.
Sweet.
Third, I've got The Secret of NIMH, and we just discussed that. Yeah, I enjoyed Secret of NIMH. I like the characters, like where it went. It was definitely Disney-esque, I guess, in some ways. Yeah, there was a lot there to like, and took some swings there, some risks.
Which brings us to the top
and then
2.
Two is KUBO and 2 Strings. Enjoyed that, as we've talked about. Visually, it's wonderful, and it's got a lot going for it. And 1 I gave to BIRDBOY.
Wow.
The Forgotten Children. I gave 1 because this is the movie that I want to watch again. Out of all these, I'm probably not going to revisit
Beowulf. Yeah.
Movie is Birdboy for the Forgotten Children. I always enjoy when there's something really weird that gets itself out there. It just doesn't happen very often. Because this is what happens when they finally put something like that out, and nobody knows what to make of it. Nobody knows how to market it. It never does well. So a weird movie makes it out there every once in a while.
Well, there's a famous exchange between a director. I can't remember their names, but it doesn't really matter to the moral of the story. The two famous directors are talking to each other, and one says, I've just spent $15 million on a movie about a dream within a dream. And the other director said, you just lost $15 million. I'm going to start my list by saying that I basically agree with you that I recommend all of these movies. If you like animation and you like fantasy, they're movies that are worthy of your time. There's nothing here that's a complete write-off. But something had to be at the bottom and something had to be at the top. And we're going to start off in agreement. To my own surprise, I put The Last Unicorn in 6th place. Despite how much I loved it as a kid, the second half of the movie kind of felt long and weighed down by a less interesting romance, and all of a sudden just song after song in a row. I don't mind it, but until this point it had been a movie with songs, and the second half almost became a musical, so I took some points away. In 5th place, The Uncanny Valley of Beowulf. I love how over the top and aggressively aggressive the movie is. Like, I like this sort of body, bring me another beer wench sort of vibe that they kind of went for and embraced. And so I appreciate it. But you can tell that it's an experiment and that its animation has aged. So this is where I guess our biggest disagreement. All the way in 4th place is where I ended up putting Birdboy and The Forgotten Children. Mainly because I have a hard time just closing my hand over what the hell this whole movie is about. It is almost too ambitious, I think a person could say. It's about everything. It's about so much that it might be about nothing. But it puts enough hooks in me that I keep on wanting to go back and find out what more I can pull from it, or if it is in fact solvable. And I do think that's a question. Well, is it a solvable picture? I'm not sure.
Well, maybe they realized they had to get it all in there.
Maybe they realized they had to put all of it in there? Is that what you said?
No, they had one shot at making a movie. So
right.
Any idea they had, so they had to put it all in there. So.
All right. We're probably not going to make any money off of this, so let's not leave anything unsaid. Everything's on the table. In 3rd place, with some deliberation, I put Ponyo. It's uncomfortable for me to put a Miyazaki film as low as 3 because I am a fan. But I do think this sort of comfortably fits in one of his more kid-oriented films. And that's not a demerit against it. Kids need movies too. And I really appreciated as a parent of 2 boys when they were younger. It really sucked to have to sit through something. Like I remember the boys really wanted to watch the Chipmunks, and I had to squirm my way through the Chipmunk movie. If they want to watch a Miyazaki movie, I was going to be all smiles every time. But it's not essential Miyazaki. It's just really solid Miyazaki. 2nd place, The Ambitious and Dark Secret of NIMH. I appreciate that they were trying a tougher story on a kid's audience, and I appreciate them kind of rubbing Disney's nose in the poop for a little while. They only did it for a couple of years, but they did do it. No, you aren't the only business in town, Disney, and other people can tell stories to kids without talking down to them. It's really easy to get behind, Mrs. Brisby and her quest to save her son, and there are memorable characters in it. It's a lot of fun. KUBO and the Two Strings, I'm putting at number 1 just because I think it is, even with Miyazaki on the list, the most beautiful picture of the list. It is absolutely stunning to watch. It's great to watch with the sound on, but you could just play music and look at it. It stands very strongly. It's a distinct, fairly original story with familiar plot beats, but not familiar characters, and stakes that you can get behind. And great for adults and for kids. And it almost doesn't feel necessarily like it was made for kids. It was just made for people who like to be entertained. To be fair, I have a real soft spot for stop-motion animation. It might have given it a bit of an edge, but KUBO's coming out on top this week.
Okay.
Close.
Pretty close. Yeah, pretty close, yeah.
I kind of like that you put BIRDBOY as number one. Of the list, I thought it was the one that potentially you could react badly to, so... Here.
No, I enjoy it. Like I said, I want to give it a... I think, as I said, my second viewing, I may enjoy it even more.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much, Kurt. I love that you did another episode of Rank and Review. I'm going to encourage all of the people whose ears are receiving my voice right now to check out A Lifetime of Hallmark. All the information you need on quality Lifetime and Hallmark movies. Is there anything you'd like to say to the internet before we sign off, brother?
We're on all sorts of platforms.
You're on every platform?
That's it. Yeah, Podbeam, Apple, all that stuff. But yeah, no, but this was a pleasure. It was great to be back on the show.
And
maybe we can make it happen again sometime. I know this took months and months to.
I will bug you. I'll give you a little bit of a recess, but I'll bug you again. But I do not want to be a source of stress in your life, man. That's not my my job.
No, I enjoy this.
Sweet. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to Kurt again. And so another fun-filled episode of Rank and Review comes to a close. Big thank you to Kurt for being here. Make sure you check out his podcast, A Lifetime of Hallmark, where they review Lifetime and Hallmark movies, much to our enjoyment. And also check out the Shelf Shedding Movie Show, hosted by my friend Jason Dubray, and The Terror Table, the local podcast to me. They actually gets really famous, productive guests on their shows, and is a really good thing to feed your ears and brains with. Rank and Review drops every other Wednesday. This is your host and random Canadian Larry Parsons saying thank you so much for listening, and make sure you value everybody around you and take care of yourself and them, because sometimes storms break out and you're not prepared for them. So prepare for the storm before it arrives, because sometimes the storm arrives. And sometimes animated fantasy can help you escape from them, if only briefly. We'll see you every other Wednesday.